Greetings, dear ones. This is Annette Leonard of AnnetteLeonard.com, back with another moment for chronic wellness. Thank you for being here and tuning in. I am continuing to talk about how to cultivate a rich inner life. And so this is part 2 of the conversation, picking up where we left off, thinking about this idea of how do we engage more actively in our mind, spirit, and heart space, since so much of our body and much of our mind gets consumed with these chronic illnesses. I recently ran into a friend who I'll refer to as M, who has been managing really hard chronic illnesses for about the last 5 years. And mine have been going on for about a decade now. Not that this is a comparison game, but just to give you a method of knowing a bit about our circumstances. And she is really at an intersection right now where she's struggling to understand what this is all even for and whether or not continuing to live is even worth it. And I think there are many of us who can relate to that question and that struggle about if this is really how it's going to be. Is it worth continuing? Is it worth showing up for? Do I want to continue to live? And that is an understandable and realistic conundrum when the loss of identity and relationships and ability and the world starts to nose in on us and the corner seems so present and the future seems so incredibly hemmed in and limited. And when I started to think later about our conversation and compare our circumstances, one of the really big differences between me and M is that prior to her onset, she had been a lifelong athlete. I mean, an exceptional one. D1 sports in college. And that had just never been my thing. I mean, I danced for most of my young life, and I was a hike master in the Rocky Mountains in college. But outside of those two things, physical competence was not anything that I defined myself by. I defined myself more by my creativity and outlets like singing and art and intellectual pursuits. And I got to wondering if that wasn't a hallmark or a predictor for some of the ways that we then weather chronic illness, and how hard that piece of identity becomes to surrender. Because since I didn't define myself by my physical strength and by my athleticism and by my body, its shortcomings and its failings and its failure have been no small catastrophe and have not been surrendering the hardest, surest, biggest parts of me the way that they have been for her and that I'm sure they have been for some of you. So, an interesting litmus test, an interesting question to raise into the light as you think about your own struggles, both physically and mental health-wise, in coming to terms with chronic illness. And as you think about this question of how you develop your own rich inner life, how much work do you still have to do on transitioning pieces of your identity around your physical self? and your athleticism, or how you define or identify with your body. It being beautiful, it being strong, it being capable in ways that it no longer is. I'll be interested in your thoughts on this one. Thanks for tuning in. I'm grateful for you sharing some of your limited time and attention with me. And until we talk again, which I hope will be very soon, be well.